How you doing, guys? BC90 here with the next video in my Poise Showcase series. And like I mentioned in the description of my last video, the Lorien's Greatsword PvP and Breakdown, I'll be doing a dual wielding setup today. As you can see here, I've got the Great Club in the right hand and the Lothric Knight Sword in the left, and it is super fun to use. Now, just like the first two videos in this series, I will be splitting this particular setup into two. So this video here will be focused solely on the attribute breakdown and equipment breakdown and how to utilize this setup, with Poise or the updated Poise mechanics since the 1.08 patch. And my second video will be focused on the PvP using this setup. So if you want to skip all the talk and get straight into the action, guys, there will be a link below once the second video is uploaded that will direct you straight to the PvP. Okay? Otherwise, we'll get started. Now, before I go into stats and equipment, I just want to discuss how this particular setup works. Basically, your dual wielding setup, when you two-hand your Great Club here, which is a Great Hammer, the Poise breakpoint that you need is 45.85 to be able to consecutively hyper armor or tank through every two-handed R1 in the game, including from other Great Hammers. So as long as you're in your active frames, you will be able to tank through your opponent's two-handed R1s without staggering yourself, and you should be able to get them into a stagger and stun lock mode if they're not as optimized as we obviously are. So 45.85 is the breakpoint you need with Great Hammers, and we'll be able to trade with virtually everything in the game. Now, when we have the dual wielding setup, we take advantage of the Lothric Knight Sword here for quick whiff punishes, and also to combo with both weapons. So you get both your heavy attacks and also your light attacks. And on top of that, at least on the Xbox One, if you hold the Y button, you can switch over to two-handing your offhand weapon. So that even opens up the build even more, because when you two-hand the Lothric Knight Sword, you actually have those shield-piercing weapon arts that will help you deal with Great Shield users, because it does cause a massive drain in their stamina, so they should be easier to open up for you to combo them. So with this setup, not only do you have the two-handed heavy weapon to be able to get into those hyper armor trades that we want to do with Poise, but you also have something here to deal with quicker weapons, to whiff punish, and also we have something here to deal with again quicker weapons, and also to open up Great Shield users a bit quicker as well. Now, going over to our status page, we'll look at the breakdown here in our attributes. We're at level 125. In our attributes here, we've got Vigor at 39. Now, all my builds are going to have Vigor at either 39 or 40, mainly because I do think you need a greater HP pool to be able to survive combos in PvP. So 39 is good for us. Attunement is at 10, which is the base for the Knight class, because we're not really worried about spells or anything like that, or FP really. We don't really use up much FP. Endurance here is at 34. Now 34 I would say is minimum to be able to wield this effectively, because with 34 endurance you can get 4 solid swings out of your heavy weapon, which I wouldn't advise anyway because you get into negative stamina, but you have enough stamina here to play around with the dual wielding setup and still be able to dodge effectively as well. Just remember, guys, that stamina management with these heavy builds is important, so you always have to watch for your stamina bar so you don't get into that negative stamina zone, okay? So 34 endurance I'd say is the minimum you're going to need. 51 vitality, because as I've discussed in my previous build videos, we need the extra equipment load here to be able to equip heavier armor, as heavier armor gives us higher base poise, and with higher base poise we can reach the breakpoints that we need with our heavy weapons to be able to tank those two-handed R1s, okay? And with a Great Hammer you only need 45.85, which is pretty easy to reach, and when you two-hand this beast, you'll be face tanking every two-handed R1 in the game, okay? Just remember you have to be in your active frames, okay? And because Great Hammers have a bit of a longer wind-up than other heavy weapons, you really have to time it properly, otherwise you can still get staggered out of your attack animation. Now, we've got Strength at 37 and Dexterity at 18. Now, initially I wanted to do this particular setup with more strength, but because the Lothric Knight Sword needs a minimum of 18 dexterity to wield, I had to have dexterity at that minimum. I will be doing, you know, a video again in the future focusing on the Great Club, probably a 66 strength or, you know, near thereof in the future. But for this particular setup that's dual wielding, we needed that 18 dexterity. Now, if you want to have a similar setup to this, but not use the Lothric Knight Sword, I would advise you use something like a broadsword or a longsword, as they require less dexterity, and you can put those points into strength. But I really prefer the Lothric Knight Sword. I think it's one of the better straight swords in the game, so we went for that minimum 18 there in dexterity. And on top of that, you need a minimum 18 dexterity to wield the Black Knight weapons in this game. So the Black Knight Greatsword and the Black Knight Great Axe, which I want to do videos with, also need a minimum of 18 dexterity. Now, the other stats there are at their base for the Knight class. We're not really worried about intelligence, faith, or luck. And as you can see there, our poise is at 47.82, so we're above the breakpoint we need to be in order to take advantage of those trades. Now, going over to our equipment page, we've got the Heavy Great Club plus 10, A scaling and strength. Now, if you're going to use a Great Club or a Great Hammer, I would probably say that a Heavy Gem infusion is the way to go, because you want to get that strength scaling with these particular weapons. And over here we have a refined Lothric Sword plus 10, so we get that B scaling in strength and dexterity. Now, if we go over to our status page again, you'll see there that two-handing the Great Club, we get a pretty respectable 576 AR. And on top of that, when we reinforce it with Human Pine Resin, that goes all the way up to 671. So it doesn't hit as hard as something like the Lothric Knight Greatsword, but the stagger and stun lock capability of this thing is just crazy. So, I mean, you're only going to really need 3 hits to kill someone, so I think it's more than enough. And really, with these poise builds that I'm working on, the trade-off is, you know, we have more vitality to, you know, optimize our builds with these breakpoints, you know, for a little bit less AR. But really, if you're aiming to, you know, consecutively trade with other players two-handed R1s, we're not worried about a little bit less damage output, because you're going to be able to stagger them, they won't be able to stagger you, and you'll come out on top. Now, remember that this system works only for two-handed R1s, so you won't be able to face tank, you know, every weapon art or, you know, R2s or charged R2s as the breakpoint for those particular attacks increases. So you really have to time these swings to your opponent's R1s, two-handed R1s, or one-handed R1s. You'll be able to tank through all of that. So just remember that, guys, and as always, like I mentioned before, which is critical, you need to be in those active frames, okay? Now back to our status page here, you can see that our left weapon 1 there, which is the Lothric Knight Sword, hits for 366. So on its own, it does a pretty respectable amount of damage as well. 2 or 3 hits here, and, you know, your opponent will feel it, and you'll be able to, you know, stack on even more damage with the heavier weapon. So it's quite a versatile little setup, in my opinion. Now, going back over here, we have the Blessed Cestus plus 10, which is our parry tool if we need it, and also it stacks with our Sun Princess ring, so we get the 4 to 5, you know, HP regen per tick. Because while we're focusing on trades, sometimes we may need to space out our opponent for 10 to 20 seconds just to get that extra HP back in to be able to trade and come out on top. And additionally, because I love crossbows, I've got the Knight's Crossbow plus 10 here, as well as a sidearm. So, I mean, if your opponent is also using a heavy weapon, the crossbow is going to be really useful at shooting them in their wind-up. It's a tactic that I used in my previous video with the Lorien's Greatsword that worked very effectively. And this, you know, a crossbow or an arbalist also works well against casters, you know, reactive and passive players as well. It's just generally something that I really advocate in any build. If you can make room for a crossbow, it's really going to serve you well, in my personal opinion. Now, we've got the Havel's Armor here because it gives us the highest poise values in the game, or base poise values. And like I mentioned before, we're at 47.82, so we're above that breakpoint that we need when we two-hand our Great Club. And I'll say it one more time, that breakpoint that we need is 45.85, okay? Now, I've got the Iron Helm here on my head, which is purely a fashion choice. I needed to stay below, you know, 70% weight ratio. I've already hit the breakpoint I needed, so I thought this looked, you know, the best for this particular setup. But if you really want to optimize in terms of absorption values and whatnot, I would say probably go for the Exile Mask here. As you can see, we're still just below 70% weight ratio, so no fat rolling. And it's got slightly better absorption rates there. It's got better resistances, and it gives you a bit more extra poise as well. So it's entirely up to you what you want to wear for, you know, your head attire. Now going over to our rings, this is the standard setup in pretty much all of my builds here that focus on poise. We've got the Chloranthy +2 because we need to recover stamina as quickly as possible with heavy weapons, and stack that with your Green Blossom when you fight to really see the benefits. Sun Princess to stack with the Blessed Cestus, Havel's Ring +2 for the extra equipment load, and Ring of Favor +2 for extra HP, stamina, and equipment load as well. So really the +2 iterations of these rings here I would think are the most essential in this particular setup, because it allows us to equip heavier armor and have all these weapons here at our disposal to deal with different threats that we face in the metagame, and also stay below 70% weight ratio as you see above there. Now you're going to need a high vitality as well. Like I mentioned, vitality is the most important stat that you need when you're trying to optimize for poise, because that allows you as well to, you know, equip heavier armor and whatnot. And also I'm pretty sure it gives you, you know, slight boosts to your flat defenses and whatnot, but I'm not I'm not an expert on that particular side of it, so don't quote me on the flat defenses part, but you do get that increase in equipment load, which is what you're going to need. So that pretty much wraps up this particular setup and how to utilize it, focusing on the ability to, you know, trade against heavier weapons, two-handing this weapon, so those two-handed R1's not a problem for us, the ability to deal with faster weapons and whiff punish as well, the ability to open up shields if we need to, the ability to parry if we want to, HP regen as well, and also the ability to shoot people in the face, which is awesome, always awesome in my opinion. Now, just before I finish this video, I might mention that I have seen similar setups to this before, utilizing probably an S-Stock and a Yorm's Great Machete, which, don't get me wrong, is also a pretty effective setup as well, as the Yorm's Great Machete has a pretty awesome pancaking ability. It's got awesome stagger and stun lock capability, but it is a Great Axe. So with a Great Axe you have the same poise breakpoints as Ultra Great Swords, which is to say if you want to be able to tank the two-handed R1s from a Great Hammer, you're going to need that base poise up to 52, which is a lot harder to reach in my opinion. I will be doing videos on you know, optimizing your base poise at 52 using Great Axes and Ultra Great Swords if you want to be able to trade against Great Hammers, but really you know, I don't think you really have to do that, to be honest. There's other ways to deal with Great Hammers, you know, if you're a poise build and you're not optimized to fight them. Like you saw in my Lorien's Greatsword video, you know, spacing and, you know, shooting them in their wind up and whatnot, or poking with your Ultra Great Swords is also an effective strategy, but it's entirely up to you. So I will be doing videos that focus on that 52 base poise breakpoint that you need with Great Axes and Ultra Great Swords later down the track, if you want to be able to trade with Great Hammer two-handed R1s. But anyways, that pretty much wraps up the build breakdown and setup for this particular build. I've had a lot of fun using this particular setup, to be honest guys, so when the video is uploaded below, have a look at part 2, so you'll get to see some PvP with this particular setup, and let me know what you guys think. Now, if you enjoyed this video, hit the like button. If you're enjoying my content, please subscribe. Otherwise, as always guys, thank you for watching.